Nathaniel sat alone in his grand but empty mansion, staring at the dust-covered wedding photo on the wall. He had barely noticed it all these years, yet now it was all he could look at. The image of Elena's gentle smile beside him, one he had taken for granted for so long, sent a sharp pain through his chest. He reached out, fingers grazing the glass, as if touching it could somehow take him back in time, back before he had lost her. But the years of cold indifference could not be undone with a single moment of regret. That night, sleep evaded him. Every time he closed his eyes he saw her, Elena standing at the door of that small home, holding Lily's tiny hand, looking at him not with anger, but with quiet acceptance, as if she had long given up expecting anything from him. That hurt more than hatred ever could. He turned restlessly in bed, memories flooding back, her laughter in the early years of their marriage, the way she used to wait up for him when he worked late, only for him to brush her off with a dismissive nod. He had thought money and success were all that mattered, never realizing that in his pursuit of wealth, he had let go of the one thing that made life worth living. By dawn, he had made his decision. He could not let her slip away again. Even if she no longer loved him, even if she never forgave him, he needed to be close to her and Lily. He had already lost so much time. That morning, he made arrangements to move into a house just a few doors away from Elena and Lily's home. He didn't tell Elena, he knew she would resist, but he hoped that by being close, he could at least show her that he had changed. For the first few days, he kept his distance. He watched them from afar, Lily running around the front yard with her friends, Elena stepping out in the morning to go to work, her hair pulled into a neat bun, her expression calm and unreadable. He wanted to speak to her, but he knew it would take time. One evening, he saw Lily sitting alone on the porch, holding a stuffed bear with a slightly torn ear. She seemed deep in thought, her small fingers tracing patterns on the bear's fur. Taking a deep breath, Nathaniel walked over, his heart pounding harder than it ever had in a boardroom meeting. "That's a nice bear you have there," he said gently. Lily looked up, blinking at him with curiosity. "Mommy sewed him for me," she said proudly. "His name is Benny." Nathaniel smiled. "Benny looks well loved." He hesitated for a moment before adding, "Would you like a new bear? Maybe one with a big bow." Lily thought about it for a second, then shook her head. "No, thank you. Mommy says we should love things even when they're old and not perfect." Nathaniel felt something tighten in his chest. Out of the mouths of children came truths that cut deeper than any words ever could. Before he could say more, Elena stepped outside, her expression guarded. "Lily, it's time to come inside," she called. Lily stood up obediently, but before leaving, she turned to Nathaniel. "Are you our new neighbor?" Nathaniel hesitated. "Something like that," he said softly. Elena didn't say a word as she took Lily's hand and led her inside. But just before closing the door, she glanced back at Nathaniel, her eyes unreadable. It wasn't hatred. It wasn't anger. But it wasn't forgiveness either. And for now, that was enough. Days passed, and Nathaniel found himself searching for every possible excuse to be around Lily. He visited the park at the same time they did. He coincidentally ran into them at the grocery store. Each time, he made sure to approach cautiously, never pushing too hard. Slowly, Lily started warming up to him. She asked him questions, simple ones at first, like what his favorite color was or whether he liked ice cream. Nathaniel answered each one as honestly as he could, cherishing every small moment he got with her. One afternoon, as he sat on a bench at the park, he watched Lily playing with a group of children. She ran freely, her laughter ringing through the air like the sweetest melody he had ever heard. But then, in an instant, everything changed. She tripped on an uneven patch of grass and fell hard onto the pavement. For un moment, terre var silence. Then, the wailing started. Nathaniel was on his feet before he even realized it. He rushed forward, kneeling beside her. "Lily, are you hurt?" he asked, his voice tight with worry. Tears welled up in her eyes as she clutched her scraped knee. "It hurts," she whimpered. Nathaniel swallowed the lump in his throat. He had never been there to comfort her before, had never even known what it felt like to hold her when she was in pain. Gently, he scooped her up in his arms. She fit so perfectly against him, so small, so fragile. "It's okay," he murmured, stroking her back. "You're very brave." Lily sniffled, but didn't push him away. Instead, she nestled into his chest, her tiny hands gripping his shirt. At that moment, Nathaniel felt something shift inside him. It wasn't just regret. It was a desperate, aching need to be a father to this little girl, to make up for the years he had missed. Then, he heard a soft voice behind him. "Give her to me." He turned to see Elena standing there, her face unreadable. Nathaniel hesitated for only a second before carefully handing Lily over. Elena examined her daughter's knee before letting out a soft sigh. "You're okay, sweetheart. We'll clean it up at home." Lily wiped her tears and nodded, then turned to Nathaniel. "Thank you for helping me," she said, her voice still wobbly. Nathaniel smiled, but his heart ached. "Any time, little one." As Elena carried Lily away, she didn't look back. But Nathaniel knew one thing: he had taken a step closer. It wasn't much, but it was something. And for now, that was enough. Nathaniel couldn't get the moment out of his mind. The way Lily had clung to him, the warmth of her tiny hands gripping his shirt, the way she had looked up at him with innocent trust before whispering, "Thank you." It was such a small thing, yet it made his heart ache in a way he had never known before. That night, he stood by the window of his new home, staring at the small house where Elena and Lily lived. The lights were on, casting a warm glow through the curtains. He could picture them inside, Elena gently tending to Lily's scraped knee, perhaps humming a lullaby to soothe her daughter to sleep. A life so far removed from his own, yet a life he now longed to be a part of. The next morning, he found himself outside at the same time Elena was leaving for work. She stepped onto the porch, dressed in a simple yet elegant outfit, her hair pulled into a practical bun. Lily trailed beside her, holding a small pink backpack. Lily noticed him first. "Hi, Mr. Nathaniel," she called cheerfully, as if their emotional moment at the park had erased all distance between them. Elena stiffened, but said nothing. Nathaniel crouched to Lily's level, offering a warm smile. "Off to school?" Lily nodded enthusiastically. "Mommy's walking me today." For a moment, Nathaniel hesitated. Then, with a deep breath, he turned to Elena. "Would it be all right if I walked with you?" Elena's gaze was guarded, but she sighed softly. "It's just a short walk," she said after a pause. That was all the permission he needed. As they strolled down the sidewalk, Nathaniel found himself stealing glances at Elena. She walked with a quiet grace, her posture strong yet reserved. The years had changed her. She was no longer the young, hopeful woman he had once known. Life had made her cautious, had forced her to build walls around her heart. "You don't have to do this, you know," Elena said suddenly, her voice low. Nathaniel turned to her. "Do what?" "Pretend," she said, eyes fixed ahead. "Lily doesn't know who you are, and maybe that's for the best." His chest tightened. "I'm not pretending, Elena. I just want to know her. And I want to," he stopped himself. He had no right to say he wanted to make things right. Some things were beyond repair. Elena sighed, running a hand through her hair. "She's a child, Nathaniel. She doesn't understand. But I do. And I won't let you walk in and out of her life like you did mine." The words hit him harder than he expected. They reached the school, and Lily ran ahead toward her friends. Before disappearing into the building, she turned back, waving. "Bye, Mr. Nathaniel." He smiled, waving back. "See you soon, Lily." Elena hesitated for a moment, then turned away without another word. Nathaniel watched her go, his heart heavy. He had a long way to go before she would ever trust him again. But he wasn't going anywhere. Nathaniel spent the next few weeks finding ways to be a quiet presence in Lily's life. He never pushed, never overstepped, but he was always there. One afternoon, as he walked past their house, he noticed Lily sitting on the front steps, frowning at a small notebook in her lap. "Trouble with homework?" he asked gently. Lily looked up, surprised, then nodded. "Math is really hard." Nathaniel chuckled, sitting down beside her. "Want some help?" She hesitated, then handed him the notebook. "Mommy helps me, but she's really busy with work." As he explained the problem to her, Lily listened intently, her little brows furrowed in concentration. When she finally got the answer right, she beamed up at him. "I did it!" she exclaimed. Nathaniel felt an unexpected surge of pride. "You sure did, kiddo." Elena's voice cut through the moment. "Lily, dinner's ready." Lily turned toward the house. "Coming, Mommy." She looked back at Nathaniel. "Thank you for helping." "Any time," he said with a smile. Elena stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching them. Her expression was unreadable, but she didn't call Lily away immediately. For Nathaniel, that was a small victory. And small victories were how he was going to win them back. The next few days passed in a blur, yet every moment felt significant to Nathaniel. He found himself unconsciously timing his walks so he could run into Elena and Lily, lingering just a little longer in their presence, as if afraid the connection would slip through his fingers again. Lily, oblivious to the weight of the past, continued to warm up to him with each passing day. She would excitedly wave when she saw him, run to him with her latest school drawings, and babble about her day as if he had always been a part of her little world. Nathaniel treasured every moment, though a small gnawing guilt in his chest reminded him that he hadn't earned this trust, not yet. Elena, however, remained wary. She didn't forbid him from being around Lily, but she kept a careful distance. Nathaniel could see the conflict in her eyes whenever she caught them together. She wasn't sure whether to push him away or allow him to stay. One evening, Nathaniel found himself at the local cafe, sipping his coffee absent-mindedly when a familiar voice broke his thoughts. "You're playing a dangerous game." He looked up to find Elena standing there, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. She hadn't come with Lily this time. This was something else. Something just between them. Nathaniel gestured toward the seat across from him. "Sit with me." She hesitated, then sighed and slid into the chair. "We need to talk." He braced himself.
"I'm listening."
Elena's fingers tapped lightly against the table before she finally met his gaze. "Lily is starting to get attached to you." A lump formed in his throat. "And you don't want that." "It's not that simple," she whispered. "You walked away once, Nathaniel. You left when I needed you most.
And now, you're coming back like nothing ever happened.
But things did happen. I had to pick up the pieces of my life alone. I had to raise our daughter without you." He flinched at the words, his hands clenching into fists. "I never meant to." "But you did," she cut in sharply. "And I can't, no I won't, let Lily go through that kind of pain. She deserves stability, Nathaniel. Not a father who walks in and out whenever it's convenient for him." The accusation stung, but he didn't argue. She had every right to be angry. "I don't want to hurt her," he said softly. Elena exhaled, rubbing her temples. "Then tell me, why now? Why come back after all these years?"
Nathaniel hesitated.
The truth was complicated, tangled in regrets and missed chances. But at its core, it was simple. "Because I made a mistake," he admitted. "And I can't live with it anymore." Elena looked at him for a long moment, as if searching for the truth in his eyes. Then, without another word, she stood up and walked away. Nathaniel watched her go, his heart heavier than ever. He wasn't sure if he was winning her trust or losing what little chance he had left. The next morning, Nathaniel found himself standing outside the school again, hands in his pockets, watching as the children ran into the building. He wasn't waiting for Elena today. He was waiting for Lily. She spotted him immediately and ran over. "Mr. Nathaniel." He crouched down, smiling. "Hey, kiddo. How was your day?" "It was okay," she said cheerfully. Then her expression turned serious. "Mommy was really quiet last night." Nathaniel's chest tightened. "Was she?" Lily nodded, her little brows furrowing. "She does that when she's thinking really hard about something." Nathaniel swallowed. "Lily, can I ask you something?" She tilted her head. "What?" He took a deep breath. "If you could have anything in the world, what would it be?" Lily didn't hesitate. "I'd want Mommy to be happy." The simplicity of her answer knocked the air out of his lungs. She beamed up at him. "Mommy works so hard, and sometimes she looks really tired. I just want her to smile more." Nathaniel felt something shift inside him. He had come back for Lily, but in doing so, he had been so focused on the past, on making up for his mistakes, that he hadn't truly considered what Elena had gone through all these years. "I want her to be happy too," he whispered. Lily grinned. "Then you should make her smile more." Nathaniel chuckled softly, ruffling her hair. "I'll try, kiddo." As he walked away, her words echoed in his mind. He wasn't just going to prove himself to Lily. He was going to prove himself to Elena. And this time, he wouldn't fail. Nathaniel spent the following days trying to keep his promise to Lily, trying to make Elena smile. But it wasn't easy. She had built walls around herself, thick and impenetrable, forged from years of heartache and disappointment. And every time he tried to get closer, she pushed him away, reminding him with guarded looks and short, clipped responses that she hadn't forgotten the past. But Nathaniel wasn't giving up. It started with small gestures, offering to help carry groceries when they ran into each other at the store, waiting outside the school with Lily so Elena wouldn't have to rush from work, and occasionally bringing coffee to her shift at the diner. She never thanked him outright, but he noticed how her shoulders weren't as tense when he was around, how she hesitated just a fraction of a second less before speaking to him. It wasn't much, but it was something. Then one rainy evening, fate handed him an opportunity he couldn't ignore. Nathaniel was walking toward his car after a meeting when he noticed a familiar figure struggling to start an old beat-up sedan in the pouring rain.
Elena.
He rushed over without hesitation, knocking lightly on her driver's side window. She jumped, startled, before rolling it down halfway. "What are you doing here?" she asked, rain dripping from her hair onto her shoulders. "I could ask you the same thing," he replied, offering a small smile. "Need some help?" She sighed, clearly debating whether to refuse, but eventually, she shook her head.
It won't start.
"It does this sometimes, but I usually get it going." Nathaniel leaned down. "Pop the hood. Let me take a look." She hesitated. "You know cars." He chuckled. "I used to fix them when I was younger, before I got wrapped up in business." After a moment, she relented, stepping out of the car. Nathaniel quickly pulled off his coat and held it over her, shielding her from the rain. "You don't have to." "Just let me," he said gently. For once, she didn't argue. He worked quickly, checking the battery, the starter, and the fuel line. Meanwhile, Elena stood beside him, arms wrapped around herself for warmth. "Your car's in worse shape than I thought," he murmured. She let out a dry laugh. "I can't afford to replace it right now." Nathaniel frowned. "You shouldn't have to drive something this unreliable, Elena. What if it breaks down with Lily in the car?" Her jaw tightened. "I manage." He sighed, wiping his hands on a handkerchief before turning to her. "Let me help." She shook her head instantly. "No.
Elena.
I don't need your charity, Nathaniel," she snapped. "It's not charity," he said firmly.
It's trying to be there for you.
For Lily. Isn't that what you wanted? For me to take responsibility. She looked at him for a long moment, emotions flickering across her face. Anger, frustration, exhaustion.
And ten, so meeting softer.
Finally, she let out a slow breath.
Fine.
Just, let me think about it. Nathaniel nodded.
Fair enough.
They stood in the rain a moment longer, silent except for the pattering drops around them. Then, for the first time in years, Elena offered him something he had almost given up hoping for.
A small, hesitant smile.
And for Nathaniel, it was everything. The days that followed felt different, lighter in some ways. Elena was still guarded, but the outright hostility had faded. There were moments when she let her guard slip, when she laughed at something Lily said or when she allowed Nathaniel to walk her home without immediately making an excuse to leave. But with every step forward, there was a reminder of how much time they had lost. One evening, as Nathaniel sat at his desk, his phone buzzed with a message.
Elena, can we talk?
His heart leaped to his throat. It was the first time she had ever reached out first. Without hesitation, he grabbed his coat and headed to the diner, where she was finishing her shift. When he arrived, she was waiting outside, arms crossed against the cool night air. "You okay?" he asked cautiously. She nodded but didn't meet his eyes. "I wanted to ask you something." "Go ahead." She took a deep breath. "Why didn't you ever come back?" The question hit him like a punch to the gut. Nathaniel swallowed hard.
He hesitated.
"I thought I was doing the right thing." Elena scoffed. "The right thing?"
Leaving him alone? Abandoning your daughter.
"I didn't know about Lily," he said quickly. "If I had." "But you knew about me," she interrupted, voice trembling.
And you still walked away.
Nathaniel ran a hand through his hair. I was scared, Elena. Scared of failing you, of being someone who couldn't give you what you deserved. I told myself you were better off without me. She let out a bitter laugh. And you decided that for me? Without even asking. He exhaled sharply. I was young and stupid, and I thought I was protecting you. Elena finally looked at him, her gaze piercing. You didn't protect me, Nathaniel.
You broke me.
His breath caught. She turned away, wrapping her arms around herself. I spent years hating you. But even after all that, I still wanted you to come back. She stopped, shaking her head.
It doesn't matter anymore.
It does, Nathaniel whispered.
It matters to me.
Elena closed her eyes, as if willing herself not to feel anything. Elena, he said, stepping closer. I can't undo what I did. But I can be here now. If you'll let me. She was silent for so long that he feared he had pushed too far. Then, in the quietest voice, she whispered, I don't know how to trust you again. His heart clenched. Then let me earn it, he murmured.
No more promises.
Just actions. She hesitated, then gave the smallest nod. Nathaniel knew it wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't a second chance, not yet. But it was something. And for now, that was enough. The days that followed were filled with an unspoken tension, a fragile balance between the past and the present. Nathaniel was patient, careful not to push too hard, but he never stopped showing up. He picked Lily up from school when Elena was working late, he helped her with her homework, and he listened to her stories with genuine interest. And little by little, Elena began to let down her guard. She no longer flinched when he brushed past her in the kitchen. She no longer avoided his eyes when they sat across from each other at the diner. And sometimes, just sometimes, she would catch herself smiling at something he said before quickly composing herself. One evening, Nathaniel arrived at the diner just as Elena was finishing her shift. It had become a quiet ritual between them. He would wait for her, walk her home, and they would talk about everything except the things that truly mattered. But that night, something felt different. Elena was standing outside, arms crossed, her expression unreadable.
So meeting vrouw?
Nathaniel asked, stepping closer. She hesitated before speaking. Lily's been asking questions about us. About why we weren't together when she was born. Nathaniel swallowed hard. He had expected this, but it still made his heart clench. What did you tell her? The truth, Elena said simply. That we made mistakes. That sometimes, people love each other but don't know how to hold on.
Nathaniel nodded slowly.
That's fair.
Elena exhaled sharply.
She asked me if I still love you. His breath caught. And what did you say? She turned to look at him, her gaze searching. I didn't know how to answer. Silence stretched between them, heavy and full of everything left unsaid. Finally, Nathaniel took a step forward, closing the space between them. Elena, I know I don't deserve a second chance.
I know I kent as past.
But I love you. I never stopped. Her eyes shimmered with emotions she tried to suppress. Nathaniel. I don't need an answer right now, he whispered. I just need you to know. She looked away, biting her lip, and for a moment, he thought she would push him away again. But then in the quietest voice she murmured, I don't know if I can go through it again.
If he can survive another heartbreak.
You won't have to, he promised. This time, I'm not going anywhere. She didn't respond, but she didn't walk away either. And for the first time, Nathaniel allowed himself to hope. Days turned into weeks, and though Elena still carried her doubts, something between them had shifted. There were more stolen moments, more laughter, and a warmth that neither of them dared to name just yet. One evening, as they sat in Elena's small living room, Lily curled up beside her mother, flipping through an old photo album. Mommy, Lily said suddenly, pointing at a picture. Look.
It's you and Daddy when you were young.
Elena's breath hitched as she glanced at the photo, an old, faded snapshot of her and Nathaniel in their early 20s, smiling at each other with a love that had once been so simple, so full of promise. Nathaniel leaned closer, his heart tightening at the memory. I remember that day, he said softly. We had just finished painting your first apartment.
You got more paint on yourself than the walls.
Elena chuckled despite herself. You weren't much better. We were a mess. Lily grinned.
You look so happy. Elena's smile faltered.
Nathaniel saw the hesitation in her eyes and reached out, his fingers gently brushing against hers. We were, he admitted. And we can be again. Elena looked at him, her walls crumbling just a little more. Lily, completely unaware of the weight of the moment, beamed. Can we take a new picture? One with all of us together. Elena hesitated, but when Nathaniel squeezed her hand, offering her a silent promise, she exhaled and nodded. Lily jumped up excitedly, grabbing her mother's phone.
Okay, Everione, smile.
As the camera clicked, Nathaniel looked at Elena, noticing the way her eyes softened, the way her lips curved ever so slightly, the way her hand was still resting in his. And in that moment he knew. He had finally found his way home. The sun was setting in hues of gold and crimson, casting a warm glow over the quiet little town. A gentle breeze carried the scent of spring blossoms, and in the distance, laughter from children playing filled the air. It was a peaceful evening, the kind that whispered of new beginnings. Elena stood on the porch of her small house, her heart beating steadily as she watched Nathaniel standing just a few steps away. He had been coming here often, never pushing, never demanding, just waiting. For her. For the moment she was ready to let go of the pain and step into something new. She took a slow breath, feeling the weight of everything they had been through. The years of separation, the heartbreak, the longing, the unanswered questions, they had all led to this moment. You don't give up easily, do you? She asked softly, a small smile tugging at the corner of her lips. Nathaniel chuckled, his deep voice filled with warmth. Not when it comes to you. A silence settled between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was filled with something unspoken, something neither of them needed to put into words. Then, finally, Elena spoke. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to trust that we won't fall apart again.
Nathaniel steppet closer. Hai esgasen eva leaving hers. Vi will fall.
We will make mistakes. But this time, we'll fight for each other.
Vi won't let go.
Her chest tightened, emotion swelling inside her. She had spent so long being afraid of being hurt again, of losing him all over, but in this moment, she realized something. Love wasn't about perfection. It wasn't about promises that nothing would ever go wrong. It was about choosing each other despite the risks. It was about standing side by side, even when things got difficult.
And Nathaniel was here.
He had shown her in every way that mattered, that he wasn't going anywhere. A tear slipped down her cheek, but this time, it wasn't sadness. It was relief. It was hope. She stepped forward and placed her hand in his. His fingers closed around hers, firm and steady, like an anchor in the storm. And in that touch, she found her answer. This love, their love, had endured years of pain, distance, and regret. And yet, it had survived. As Nathaniel pulled her into his arms, holding her as though he would never let go, Elena knew. This wasn't just a second chance. It was fate bringing them home. Thank you for staying with us until the very end of this story. I hope it has brought you deep emotions, unforgettable moments, and a meaningful message about love, forgiveness, and second chances in life. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video to show your support, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any upcoming stories. Hit the notification bell to stay updated with our latest videos. Thank you for being here, and see you in the next story.